My name is Faisal Al-Jabari. I am an Imam, a servant of Allah, a man who spent his life walking in the shadow of faith, trying to bring light wherever darkness gathered. For decades, I stood before my people in the mosque, guiding hearts, calming fears, lifting those who came to me broken and searching. I had always believed my life was built on unshakable ground. When my family and I left our homeland, we thought we were following the quiet whisper of destiny, carrying the message of Islam to new lands, new souls. We arrived full of hope, believing that every step was written for us long before we took it. But what I did not know then was that the greatest test of my life was waiting quietly, just beyond the horizon. My days had always followed the rhythm of the mosque. From the first call to prayer at dawn to the last echoes of the night, I lived for worship and service. I taught children how to recite the Quran, stood beside the grieving at funerals, blessed newborns at their first breath, and reminded my congregation that mercy is greater than all sins. There were times I would sit with the youth long after the evening prayer, sharing tea and talking about faith, about how to stand strong in a world that pulls at your soul from every side. My voice had comforted others for years. I thought it would never falter. I thought my faith was armor that could not be pierced. But life, like the ocean, hides its storms until they rise without warning. It began the year I turned 67. At first, it was a dull ache, something small I brushed aside as the tiredness of old age. I told myself it was nothing, but the pain grew sharper, twisting deep in my stomach until I could no longer ignore it. My wife, may Allah bless her patience, begged me to see a doctor. I resisted, thinking it would pass, yet she persisted, as she always did when she sensed I was hiding something. I finally agreed, mostly to ease her worry. The hospital became a place of waiting and whispers. Tests, scans, blood work each day brought another appointment, another tired smile from the nurses who already knew what I didn't. When the doctor finally spoke, I saw the truth before he said a word. His eyes told me before his lips moved. Stage 4 stomach cancer, he said softly, as if lowering his voice could soften the blow. The room felt smaller. My ears rang. My world, the mosque, my family, my purpose blurred in front of me. I went home that night and sat in silence. My prayer rug was in front of me, but I couldn't move. I remember hearing the call to prayer from the nearby mosque faint through the open window and realizing I might never answer that call again. Yet deep in my heart, beneath the shock and fear, a calm voice whispered, "This too is from Allah. It is not punishment, it is a test. And every test has meaning, even when we cannot see it." The treatments began soon after. Chemotherapy turned my body into a battlefield. My hair fell in clumps on the pillow, my skin turned pale, my hands trembled from weakness, the taste of metal never left my mouth. Yet I clung to prayer as if it were breath itself. As the poison flowed through my veins, I recited verses under my breath, feeling each word like a thread holding me to life. At night, when pain kept me awake, I would whisper to Allah, "If my time has come, let me meet you in peace, and let my final breath be in remembrance." But faith does not erase the struggle. There were nights when doubt crept in like a shadow across my chest. I would stare at the ceiling, too weak to move, asking silently, "Why me?" Then I would remember Prophet Ayub, who lost everything, yet never let go of hope. I would remember how even the strongest are tested most severely, and I would tell myself, "This is my path, and I must walk it." Still, the days grew heavier. One evening, after a long chemotherapy session, I returned home feeling emptier than I had ever felt. My wife helped me to my chair by the window. I could see the last light of sunset spilling across the sky, gold fading into deep blue. I closed my eyes, whispering a small prayer. Then it began. A pressure, small at first, then spreading, crushing. A tightness gripped my chest like a closing fist. My breath came short, shallow. I tried to speak, to call her name, but the words caught in my throat. Panic surged. The last thing I remember before everything changed was the hard floor rushing up to meet me. My legs gave out, my vision dimmed, and the world folded into darkness. To darkness. Yet the next instant, I was standing, or rather floating, above my own body, staring down at a scene that didn't seem real. My wife was on her knees beside me, her trembling hands pressed over her mouth in shock, her eyes wide with terror. The sound of her crying echoed through the room, sharp and raw, cutting through the air like a blade. The paramedics had arrived, moving with a kind of desperate rhythm. I could see one of them pressing hard against my chest, counting under his breath, his partner readying the defibrillator. I knew that body they were working on was mine, but it felt like I was watching a stranger. My heart wasn't beating, but somehow I was still here, awake, aware, watching everything unfold. I thought I should have felt fear, but instead there was calmness, deep, strange calmness. I tried to shout to my wife to tell her I was okay, that she shouldn't cry, but no sound came out. My mouth didn't even move. I was only a presence, hovering silently above the chaos. Everything below looked almost slowed down, like time had lost its meaning. Then the room began to change. The light in it grew brighter, not from the lamps or the medical equipment, but from somewhere else. It was faint at first, far away, like the first spark before dawn. It wasn't harsh. It was warm, so warm it felt alive. I felt it pulling at me like it was calling me home. Every part of me wanted to go toward it. The noise below started to fade. The shouts, the crying, even the pounding of my heart that wasn't really there, all softened until they were distant hums. For a moment, everything heavy inside me lifted. The pain, the fear, the weight I didn't even know I carried. They melted away, leaving only peace. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. Something was waiting for me beyond that light. Something that would shake everything I ever believed, everything I had preached about life and what comes after. I hovered there, looking at my lifeless body, and the world felt both real and unreal. The paramedics were still working with urgency, their movements fierce but fading. My wife's sobs pierced through the fading sounds, pulling at my soul. I wanted so badly to hold her, to tell her I wasn't gone. Yet no matter how I tried, nothing bridged the space between us. It was as though I was caught in a shift between two worlds, alive, yet not among the living. And still there was that light. Steady, patient, calling. I could feel the energy of the room, its tension, its corruption of order into chaos, as if every emotion had color and sound. Yet I was free from pain. My mind was clearer than ever before. My thoughts weren't fogged or frantic. I understood things without words, like my soul was remembering something ancient. Then I felt myself start to move, not walking, not flying, but gliding, drawn toward that distant glow. It pulsed softly, welcoming me. I didn't resist. I didn't want to. Behind me, the scene of flashing lights and desperate voices faded like smoke. The warmth grew stronger. It wrapped around me like sunlight through water, soft and endless. As I drifted closer, faint sounds began to echo from beyond that radiant veil. Tones and harmonies I couldn't recognize but somehow knew deep inside my spirit. I thought I heard a voice, gentle yet powerful, calling my name. At first it was faint, like whispers from a faraway dream. Then slowly, it grew into something real. My mother's voice, soft and trembling, singing the same lullaby she used to hum when I couldn't sleep. I could almost see her sitting by my bed, her hands resting on the old quilt she made, her eyes tired but full of love. That melody, I hadn't heard it in decades, yet it rose inside me like a tide, stirring something I didn't know was still alive. A warmth spread through me, not from the light around me, but from somewhere deeper, like my soul remembering where it came from. Then came another sound, my father's voice, calm, steady, carrying the rhythm of a prayer he would recite every evening before dinner at Han. I could almost smell the tea he brewed, hear the chair scrape the floor as he sat by the window, his fingers tracing the wooden beads he always carried. These were not just memories. They felt real, alive, pulsing in the air. Each word, each note seemed to float within the light, glowing like golden dust suspended in eternity. The light itself was alive. It moved, breathed, and within it I saw moments of my own life unfolding, scenes I hadn't thought of in years. My childhood home, the worn blue door with the crack in the frame, the mosque where I first stood trembling as I led a prayer, my voice shaking with both fear and faith. I saw faces, some smiling, some crying, people I had counseled through loss, through doubt, through their own pain and chaos. Every face carried a story, and each story was part of me. It was as though the entire fabric of my being had been woven into that radiant light. I stood inside it and saw everything I had ever been. Yet there was no regret, no sorrow, only an immense stillness. Peace like I had never known. My heart whispered, "This is it. This is the presence of Allah." Tears flowed freely, not from pain, but from joy so pure it burned gently through me. I felt whole, every wound, every mistake, every act of love all joined together in a single, endless note. The light wrapped around me and I thought nothing could break that harmony. But then there was a shift. The warmth that once wrapped around me like a gentle embrace began to fade, slipping away so slowly I almost didn't notice until it was gone. A chill crept in, quiet but certain, filling the air with a strange stillness that felt unnatural. The light, once steady and golden, began to tremble. It flickered like the last breath of a dying flame, and with each pulse, the shadows grew longer, heavier. The soft sounds of my parents' voices, their laughter, the warmth in every word were suddenly gone. In their place came whispers, low, uneasy. They moved through the air like smoke, circling me from every direction. I turned my head, trying to catch one voice, any voice that felt familiar. But they melted into each other, forming a choir of unease that made my heart tighten. I tried to hold on to that earlier peace, the calm that had felt so pure, but it was slipping through me like water through open fingers. I told myself to breathe, to stay still, but the air itself had changed. The world around me was shifting. No, it was shifting. The light dimmed until everything became a dull, gray haze. The warmth beneath my feet turned to cold stone, hard and lifeless. I looked around, trying to find something I knew. Trees appeared, their shapes barely visible through the fog. But these were not the trees of beauty or paradise I had known. These were dead, their bark blackened and cracked, their branches twisted into claws that reached for a sky that no longer existed. The air smelled of rot, heavy with decay. Every breath I took felt sharp, scraping my throat as if the world itself wanted to keep me from breathing. Then the sounds began. At first it was distant, a faint moan carried by the wind. Then another, then many. The cries grew louder, echoing from all around. Men, women, children. The sound of pain filled the air, echoing in waves that seemed to sink into my chest. It wasn't just noise, it was emotion-made sound. Their cries carried sorrow so deep it burned inside me. I wanted to cover my ears, to shut it out, but there was no escape. The voices were inside me now. Then I heard it. A single scream that tore through everything. A woman's voice. Raw, broken, filled with terror. I froze. There was something about that voice I knew, something that shouldn't be here. My heart started pounding as realization struck like a blade. It was my mother's voice, the same voice that used to sing softly to me as I fell asleep, humming songs from her childhood in a language that only she and my grandmother spoke. But now, there was no song. Only her crying, pleading, begging for mercy. No, I whispered, but even my voice betrayed me. No sound came out. It was as if the darkness had stolen it too. My body trembled. My knees felt weak. The gray turned darker, thicker, almost alive. It pressed against me, wrapping around me like a living thing. It wasn't just darkness anymore. It was a presence, a suffocating, thinking void that wanted me silent. It pressed against my chest until I could barely breathe. I tried to move, to run, but there was nowhere to go. The world was gone, replaced by something endless and hollow. Then came a sound unlike the rest, a deep, resonant voice that cut through everything. It didn't whisper, it commanded. Faisal, it said, my name echoing through the void like thunder beneath water. Everything will now be revealed. The words vibrated inside me, not through my ears, but through my bones. It wasn't angry, yet it carried power, like truth itself had found its voice. My whole body trembled. My mind couldn't make sense of it, but I knew one thing. Whatever was about to happen, it would change everything. This was no longer a place of peace. It was something far greater, far heavier, a reckoning. And somehow I knew I stood at its very heart. The darkness deepened, swallowing even the memory of light. There was no ground, no sky, only the suffocating presence pressing in from every direction. The cries grew until they were everywhere, within and beyond. They weren't just sounds anymore, they were pain itself, raw and endless, wrapping around me in waves of chaos. The scent of decay filled my lungs until I could taste it, thick and bitter like burned metal. Every breath was fire. Every heartbeat felt stolen. I tried to shut my eyes, but it didn't matter. What surrounded me wasn't seen by eyes. It was felt, lived. As I moved, or maybe it was more like being pulled through that endless hollow wasteland, something began to stir within the dark. Shapes appeared first like shadows, then like living nightmares. They were twisted, broken forms, their faces frozen in screams that never stopped. Every cry felt sharp enough to cut through me. I could feel their pain, raw and real, like it had been carved into my own soul. Men, women, children, all trapped in this endless pit of torment. Their eyes found mine, pleading, reaching, their hands clawing at the empty air as if I could pull them free. I wanted to, every part of me wanted to, but an unseen power held me still, like invisible chains locked around my body. I couldn't move, I couldn't even breathe. Then came the shift. Through the thick black air, something massive began to rise. A throne. Not a throne of glory, but one built from despair itself. It towered above the chaos, carved with ancient symbols that seemed alive, sliding and twisting in the dim, flickering light. I felt small beneath it. The thing radiated power, beautiful and terrifying all at once. My heart pounded in my chest, heavy as stone. I knew this throne did not belong in any place of peace. It was a monument to corruption, a crown made from grief, and there, sitting upon it, was a figure bound in chains so heavy they looked forged from the weight of all sorrow. The iron wrapped his wrists and ankles, dragging his body down toward the blackened ground. His head hung low, his shoulders bent as though carrying the pain of centuries. For a moment, I thought he was just another soul lost to the void. But then, the air grew still. Every voice, every scream faded away until there was nothing but silence. Slowly, the figure lifted his head. My breath caught. My heart froze. That face, I knew it. I had spoken his name on countless nights in my sermons, my hands raised high, my voice trembling with awe. It was Prophet Yusuf, the one I had taught others to look up to, the man whose story had once filled me with strength when I thought I could not stand. Yet here he was, chained, sorrowful, and silent. His eyes were deep wells of regret, filled with something that felt too human for a prophet. I whispered no, my voice breaking apart. This can't be real. Not him, not here. Prophet Yusuf's gaze met mine, and in that single look, I felt something inside me collapse. His pain was my own. It poured into me, a flood I couldn't contain. His lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, but somehow I understood the weight behind them. It was like being shown a truth I wasn't ready to face. I wanted to scream, to run, to tear at the walls of this nightmare, but my body refused to move. This has to be wrong, I thought. He doesn't belong here. He's chosen. He's light in the dark. Why would he be in a place like this? My mind spun in every direction, questions crashing like thunder inside my skull. Had I believed a lie? Had everything I preached been missing the truth right in front of me? And then it came again, that voice, the same deep, resonant voice that had called me by name before. Faisal, it said, echoing through the vast emptiness. Do you see now? Do you understand? No, I shouted, my voice breaking loose like a storm. No, I don't. Why is he here? Why am I here? This isn't how it's meant to be. The voice did not answer yet, but the darkness around me began to shift once more, trembling as if the world itself was about to open up beneath my feet. The air around me thickened, and visions appeared, first drifting like smoke, then forming into sharp, living scenes that pulled me in as if I were walking through them. I saw myself standing on stages, my voice steady and full of conviction, speaking about faith and salvation. I saw the faces of people I had once comforted, eyes filled with tears, hearts heavy with pain, listening as I spoke words of hope that I believed came from a place of truth. But then the shift came. The light dimmed, and new scenes began to rise before me. Moments I had buried long ago, moments I didn't want to see. I saw nights when I sat alone in my study, Quran open before me, whispering prayers that felt hollow. Times when my heart trembled with questions I dared not speak aloud. Times when doubt wrapped around me like cold air, whispering, "What if you are wrong?" Each forgotten moment returned, sharper than before, exposing every hidden crack in my faith. I felt exposed, stripped bare before something far greater than myself. Why is this happening? I asked, my voice breaking. I served you. I devoted my life to you. Why am I being shown this? Then, through the stillness, the voice spoke again, quieter this time, yet carrying an authority that silenced everything else. You have always sought the truth, Faisal, but have you truly found it? Have you truly known me? The words struck through me like lightning. I froze. My thoughts scattered. Of course I knew Allah. I told myself I had lived for Him. I'd given my life for His message. But the question would not let me go. Who is Allah? What does it mean to truly know Him? I turned toward Prophet Yusuf, who stood before me in the vision. His eyes held a sorrow that made my chest tighten. I wanted to speak, to ask for meaning, but my throat locked. Tears blurred my sight as I dropped to my knees. "Why won't you speak?" I cried. "Why won't you tell me what this means?" Only silence answered. Silence and that heavy darkness pressing in from every side. My faith, once a mountain, now trembled beneath me. Everything I believed in, everything I had preached to others, was suddenly fragile. I felt alone. Even the prophets seemed to carry pain here. The voice came again, slower now, like it wanted to reach the deepest part of me. "Faisal, the truth is before you. Will you have the courage to face it?" I didn't understand. I didn't know what truth it meant or what I was supposed to do. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest, and I whispered, "Nothing will ever be the same again." Then the darkness pulsed and seemed to breathe. The silence broke. The voice returned, this time deeper, wider, filling the air around me like thunder inside my bones. "Who is God?" It asked, each word echoing through the endless void. The question hit me with such force that I gasped. My own voice came out as a whisper. Who is God? I had spent a lifetime speaking his name, telling others about his mercy, his justice, his power. But now the words felt small, hollow. I wanted to answer, but nothing came out. The voice continued, pressing closer. "What do you truly know of me? Have you ever questioned what you believe? Or have you only accepted what was given to you?" My chest ached, my breath grew short. "Of course I know you," I tried to say. "I prayed to you every day, I taught others your words." But inside I knew something had shifted. The certainty I once had was breaking apart. The darkness stirred again, forming patterns, swirling shapes that twisted and shimmered like smoke caught in a storm. The shapes started to change, bending and flowing until they became full scenes, alive, bright, and almost real enough to touch. The first scene rose before me like a memory I had never lived, a massive temple, ancient and solemn. Its walls were carved with strange figures that seemed to breathe in the flickering light. People filled the space, hundreds of them, their heads bowed low before idols that stood tall and proud in a circle. Their faces carried awe, reverence, and something deeper, a quiet fear that held them captive. And I knew it. I knew this place. It was Arabia before the light, before truth reached the desert winds. It was the time of ignorance, Jalia. I had spoken about it so many times in my sermons, reciting the same lessons, warning others of corruption and false worship. Yet now, standing in the middle of it, every word I had ever said felt small. The idols were there, just as the old histories had described, Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and Manat, names I had repeated from memory countless times. Their stone faces were expressionless, their hands stretched out as if demanding something from the people who bowed before them. I could almost hear the murmurs of prayer, the soft thud of foreheads touching the ground. They looked so real, so heartbreakingly human. Then a voice, clear, powerful, and impossible to ignore, cut through the air. "Where is Allah in this place, Faisal? Is he not among these gods, prayed to beside them?" The sound shook me, my chest tightened, and a chill swept through me. I understood what it meant at once. Before Islam, the people had believed in Allah, yes, but not as the only one. He was seen as the highest among many, a part of their chaos rather than the end of it. In their times of fear and pain, they would cry out to him, but their hearts still turned to their idols. I had always known this as a fact, a line in history, something distant and done. But here in this vision, it was no longer a story. It was living truth. I could feel the dust of the temple floor beneath my feet, smell the smoke from the burning oils, and sense the confusion of those who knelt. For a brief second, I saw myself among them, my hands trembling, unsure of which god to call upon. The thought cut deep, like a blade of fire inside me. I wanted to speak, to shout that I knew the truth now, that I had seen beyond this corruption, but the air seemed to hold my voice captive. And then, without warning, everything began to shift again. I found myself standing in a land that felt ancient yet alive, bathed in a strange golden haze. It wasn't a dream. It was too sharp, too real. The air smelled of smoke and dust. The ground cracked beneath my feet. Before me stretched a wide valley filled with people draped in rough cloth, their voices rising like waves in a storm. It was the land of Canaan. They moved together toward a massive idol that towered over them like a mountain of stone. Their chants shook the air. Their offerings, grains, animals, and oil, burned on an altar that glowed red with fire. I knew that face, Baal, the ancient god of fertility and storms. But this vision felt different, heavier, charged with something sacred and dangerous all at once. As I stepped closer, I saw a carving at the base of the idol, faint but clear, as if freshly etched. The inscription read, El. My throat tightened. El, I whispered, my voice shaking. That word, that name, I knew it. It was the oldest name for God, still alive in the roots of Hebrew and Arabic. The sound of it stirred something buried deep inside me. El, Baal, Allah. Were these names connected in ways we had forgotten? Could the name of the one true God have been wrapped inside the worship of many? The thought hit me like lightning, raw and sudden. My knees trembled. Then the voice came again, clear, powerful, slicing through the wind. You never asked, Faisal. You never sought the answers. You accepted what was given to you without question, but now you must confront the truth. I wanted to resist, I wanted to turn away from what I was hearing, but I couldn't. My heart pounded as the scenes shifted like a storm breaking apart. I saw the Kaaba long before Islam. The air was heavy with incense, and idols stood shoulder to shoulder around its walls. I saw people calling on Allah while still bowing to their other gods. The sight pierced me. Then the Quran appeared before me, pages alive, turning in a rush of invisible wind. The verses glowed, each word sharp as glass. I could almost hear them whisper. The voice returned, louder now, echoing inside me. Faisal, have you ever wondered, who is Allah? What does it mean to know Him truly? Tears streamed down my face. I clutched my head and cried out, "Stop! Please stop! I can't take this anymore." But the voice did not stop. It grew until it filled everything, every corner of my mind. Who is God? What do you truly know? Then silence. The vision shattered. Light flooded everything. I was pulled upward, no, drawn through something invisible. It felt like a tunnel made of wind and fire. My chest burned, my body convulsed. And then, cold, sharp air. My eyes snapped open. A white ceiling blurred above me. I heard machines beeping, people moving, the low hum of fluorescent lights. I was back. A nurse leaned over me, her face pale under the hospital light. "You're back," she said softly. "We almost lost you." Her words felt far away. My body was trembling, heavy, strange, like it didn't belong to me anymore. My lungs fought for breath. My heart thudded weakly against my ribs. I couldn't focus on her or the room's back or the hands adjusting the wires and tubes around me. My mind was still there in that other world, still hearing that question that refused to fade. Who is God? It echoed through me like thunder in an empty valley. I had returned to life, but something inside me had shifted forever. The doubt, the wonder, the pain of that question gnawed at me. Everything I had built my faith upon, every prayer, every verse, every teaching, now stood in the light of that single, burning truth I could no longer escape. As the nurse whispered calm words and checked my pulse, I turned my head toward the window. The sky outside was gray and heavy with rain. My reflection in the glass looked like someone I used to know. My chest rose slowly. Tears filled my eyes. I didn't know the answer, but I knew this. Whatever the truth was, it would not let me rest until I faced it. And so, when I came back to life, nothing felt the same. My body was weak, my breath uneven, but the real struggle was within me, where the question still waited. Who is God? When I tried to return to what used to be my normal life, something deep inside me had changed. I followed the same routine, reciting the familiar prayers, opening the Quran each morning, moving through the same quiet rhythms of my days, but it all felt hollow, as if the world had shifted beneath my feet. Every verse, every word I once thought I knew, now seemed to look straight back at me, asking in silence, "Do you really understand?" My family wanted to know what had happened that night, what I had seen when I hovered between life and death. I avoided their questions. How could I explain the darkness that breathed like a living thing, the throne surrounded by light that wasn't light, the voice that broke me open from the inside? I couldn't even find words for myself. One dawn after another sleepless night, I wandered into the hospital chapel. It was small, almost hidden, a quiet place meant for every soul that needed rest. The air smelled faintly of old wood and candle wax. The pews were simple, carved by hands long gone. A single cross hung on the far wall, its shadow stretching across the floor like a question I was afraid to answer. I sat there, lost in the stillness, until the door opened and a man stepped in. His footsteps were soft, measured. He wore a white clerical collar and carried a small Bible pressed close to his chest. His presence didn't feel heavy or demanding, it felt steady. He gave a small nod before speaking. "You seem troubled," he said. His tone was calm, almost like someone who had been expecting me. He told me his name was Father Gabriel. I remember thinking, what could a priest possibly understand about the things I saw, about the shift that tore through my soul and showed me the edge of something infinite? But there was patience in his eyes, the kind that doesn't rush or judge. Against my better judgment, I started to speak. Once I began, I couldn't stop. The words poured out, the illness, the visions, the questions that haunted me like ghosts I couldn't escape. He didn't interrupt, he didn't correct, he only listened, as though every pause and every tremble in my voice mattered. When I finished, he said quietly, "You've been shown something rare. Those who come near death often return with their hearts opened wider than they imagined. The challenge is not to fear what you've seen, but to seek truth, whatever it costs." Something in those words struck deep. For years, I had guided others toward faith, toward trust in God. Yet now I was the one standing in the fog, unsure of what I believed. Father Gabriel offered to meet again, to talk through what I had seen, to walk with me in the search for answers. I hesitated. My pride tried to hold me back, but my hunger for meaning was stronger, so I agreed. Over time, our talks became the anchor of my days. I started bringing a small notebook to each meeting, scribbling thoughts and verses, my handwriting uneven from the tremor that had stayed with me since the hospital. Father Gabriel spoke to me about Jesus, not as an idea, but as a living presence, one that understood pain and corruption and chaos because he had carried them himself. He spoke of grace, not as mercy earned, but as a gift freely given. Then he opened his Bible and read a verse that felt like a whisper meant for me. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." The words struck like a chord inside me. For the first time in months, something inside stirred. Hope, confusion, awe, all tangled together. Was this what my vision had been leading me toward all along? That's when the dream started. Every night, I was back before the throne. The light was the same, but the scene had changed. The prophet who once stood bound by chains was free now. His face no longer sorrowful, but calm, steady, filled with a power that felt both fierce and gentle. Each time he spoke the same words, "Go find the truth." His voice carried through me, stronger than thunder, yet tender enough to break my fear. I would wake shaking, drenched in sweat, but more certain than ever that this was no ordinary dream. After many weeks of deep prayer, quiet reflection, and long talks with Father Gabriel that went late into the night, I came to a turning point I could no longer ignore. Something inside me had shifted. I decided to be baptized. It was not an easy step, not a choice made lightly. I knew what it meant. It would set me apart from my family, from the people I had served for years, and from the community that once called me one of their own. But there was a calm, steady peace in my chest that told me I had to do it. It felt like being led by a gentle but unstoppable current toward the light. The morning of my baptism, the sky was heavy with clouds, the kind that looked like soft gray blankets. I remember the way the air smelled of rain and incense from the small chapel candles. My hands shook as I held my old prayer beads, the ones I had carried for decades. My friend Daniel stood beside me, his hand firm on my shoulder. When the priest lifted the silver bowl and poured the cool water over my head, I felt something break inside me, like invisible chains snapping one by one. I heard the sound of water and breath and my own heartbeat, and it was as if time paused for a moment. A vision filled my mind, sunlight bursting through the clouds, flooding everything with warmth and clarity. The pain I had carried for so long, the chaos that had haunted my nights, the corruption that had stained my choices, it all washed away. I felt lighter, cleaner, alive. I cried, not from sorrow, but from something I can only call gratitude. My tears mixed with the baptism water, and I whispered the name of Jesus again and again. It was as though I was finally meeting him face to face after searching for so long in the dark. My clothes clung to me, heavy and cold, yet inside I felt the first fire of freedom. In the days after, something strange began to happen. The sickness that had been eating at me, the cancer that doctors said would take my life within months, started to fade. The doctors ran their tests, studied the scans, and stared at me in disbelief. One of them, a man who never spoke of faith, looked at me and said, I can't explain this, but I could. Every morning I opened the Bible that Father Gabriel had given me, the one with his handwriting in the margins, and I fell to my knees. My prayers changed. They were no longer cries of despair, but songs of thanks. The words came easily, soft and full of warmth. I spent my afternoons walking by the river behind my house, the same river where I used to take my daughter fishing when she was small. The sound of water brought peace to my spirit, reminding me of the baptism of that moment when everything began to shift. But healing the soul does not mean life becomes simple. My family could not understand. My daughter, especially, was angry. Her eyes, once full of trust, now looked at me with hurt and confusion. She said I had betrayed everything we believed, everything I had taught her as an imam. Her words pierced me deeper than any blade could. I wanted to hold her and explain, but she pulled away. Nights grew quiet, heavy with unspoken pain. I sat alone in my study, surrounded by books, praying that one day she would see the truth shining through my choices. Some bridges began to rebuild, slow and fragile like thin ice forming over a river. Others stayed broken. Yet, even in that loneliness, I was not afraid. I had found something greater than approval. I had found truth, and with it, peace. Now, when I speak to others, I don't try to convert or persuade. I tell them what happened, plain and honest, because truth does not need to be sold. It only needs to be seen. My life became a story I could no longer keep silent. It became proof that grace is real, that forgiveness can reach even the deepest wounds, that faith can breathe life where there was none. The peace that fills my days now is steady, quiet, like a heartbeat that never stops reminding me I am alive. If you are still here, listening, thank you for walking with me this far. If these words touch something inside you, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories of hope and faith that remind us what is possible when hearts are open.